Okay, so welcome students and welcome panelists. Today we are going to be discussing publishing and a little bit of a laser beam into a particular topic around it. And our topic today is the mystery of the publishing house. What actually is it? What are the jobs and how do you get one? And here today to discuss that with us is Grace Balfour-Harle, who is the Editorial Assistant at the Beano. Vikki Reilly, Marketing, Events and Sales Support Manager from Publishing Scotland, and Caroline Carpenter, Deputy Features Editor at the Bookseller. Now you're all very, very welcome, and if you'll excuse me, a little moment of fangirling that I've just realised on the top shelf of my bookcase is full of Beano and Topper albums from my childhood. So Grace, I'm particularly excited about the Beano. What we're going to start off with is the topic. So what I'd like to, I'll start off with asking each of you for a little introduction and then we'll come to the topic. So could you all just say a little bit about yourselves, who you are and what your current roles are? Start with you, Caroline.
Hi everyone, I'm Caroline. As Anne said, I'm Deputy Features Editor at the Bookseller magazine. The Bookseller is the trade magazine for the publishing industry, and my role there is to work on the features for both the magazine and its website. I work on lots of special issues throughout the year. One of the ones that's coming up is the Scotland focus, where we speak to lots of Scottish publishers and booksellers and people like Vikki at Publishing Scotland. And I also chair the Booksellers YA Book Prize, which is a prize that awards books for teenagers written by authors based in the UK and Ireland.
Thank you. Grace.
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm the editorial assistant at the Beano comic. For anyone who doesn't know, because it's quite a UK-based thing, the Beano comic is the longest running weekly children's comic in the world. It's been running for about 82 years now, and we have over 4,000 issues, so that's really exciting. I help make the comic every week.
Thank you. Vikki?
Hello everyone, I'm Vikki Reilly. I work for Publishing Scotland, which is the trade and network body for the publishing industry in Scotland. I have worked in the book industry for 20 years as a bookseller and with independent publishers, mainly in the sales and marketing department, though I have some experience with editorial and production as well. Now at Publishing Scotland, I help other independent publishers make the most of their opportunities in presenting their books to the world. So we network for events, we help them present to the trade, we do pitching sessions, we do lots of events where we invite people from the trade to speak to our member publishers. We publish catalogues, magazines, and all sorts of things to help promote our member publishers' books. And we're generally just a shoulder to cry on and a happy ear to our member publishers if they've got any questions or anything they need help with.
Thank you, Vikki. Well, the topic of the conversation has 3 parts to it. So what I'm just going to do is give one part to each of you. So I'm going to start with you, Caroline. So the publishing house, what actually is it?
A publishing house is the company that publishes books, which sounds quite simple, but there's actually a lot involved in that. So there's lots of different departments. There's, as Vikki mentioned, sales, marketing. There's editorial, which I suppose everyone kind of first thinks of when they think of publishing, but there's actually a really wide range of different kind of job roles. There's publicity, there's rights where people sell books from one country into other countries, there's book design, and probably lots more that I haven't mentioned. But yeah, just to say that there's a really huge team that goes behind every book that comes out, and lots of different skills that are used.
Which leads on nicely to the next question for Grace. what are the jobs that sit within publishing?
Well, there's sort of, as I said, I'm an editorial assistant, so you generally start off with assistant level roles, and then you move up into sort of higher level, as most jobs will do. So there's marketing assistants, there's write assistants, production assistants, editorial assistants, rights assistants. So yeah, they're the sort of people who sort of, while you're still learning about exactly how everything works, you work with under a line manager, and they sort of will make sure you're sort of learning and developing and training you up essentially to then become either, you can go on and become an executive, which was exactly the same with all those departments attached to it, or you could go on and become an editor, or sort of the head of production, head of rights, a sales representative. It depends on sort of exactly what department you're in. Publishing's very loose with its job terms, or it can be. So in some places, a production assistant could be doing the same role as in another place as a editorial assistant. They can sort of interchange quite easily. But yeah, so yeah, then you get sort of editors and then sort of head of publishing, and they then get, again, as I said, it gets very, very loose with the terms. Some places will follow a specific structure, but that can change depending on the publishing house.
I'm going to come back to that, Grace, because there's a question has popped in, but I want to put this question to Vikki first. So the third part then of the topic is, how do you get one? So if somebody says, oh, I like the sound of that, I'd like one of those. How do they go about getting one, Vikki?
There's no set way to get a job in publishing, really. That's the truth. I know most people probably think that maybe you study literature and then you go on to be a publisher, but that's not necessarily the case. You don't have to have studied literature to go on to publishing. Like, I know editors who studied maths, for example. So it's really about your skill set rather than what you've studied. I would say that will stand you in good stead to get a job. There are also publishing degrees as well, which are very useful, and I certainly did one as well. I did a master's after I did my undergraduate degree, and again, those courses are really good for offering you tasters of each specific departments within a publishing house, and you might therefore find within a publishing course which path you want to go down. But again, you don't have to do a publishing degree to get into publishing. As I say, if you do things on the side, maybe as hobbies that corresponds to the skill sets that publishers look for, that's a way to get into publishing as well. The sad thing is, it's a very oversubscribed industry. That's the reason why it's hard. Lots of people want to get into publishing, so you have to find ways to make yourself stand out, and that can involve lots of different things, as I say, depending on the skill set that you want to go through within a role in publishing.
Hannah, Caroline, there's a question coming from Hannah, and it's asking specifically, what does a production assistant do? Now, I wonder if I could broaden that out, because I'm sure there's a lot of people wanting to know what's this particular role, what's this particular role. Is there a place where students can go to look at all of the different roles within publishing and allow them to kind of read through and kind of decide which role best suits them?
Yeah.
Anybody like to take that question? Oh, Vikki, would you like to take that question?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, go to the Publishing Scotland website. Before the pre-pandemic times, we started introducing an element where we went into schools and universities to talk about publishing as an industry, particularly to areas that don't normally hear about the publishing industry. And while we can't do that at the moment, go into schools, what we've done, there's videos, there's worksheets that tell you about all different aspects of publishing. It's not 100% full yet, because we're still working on it. But I would recommend going on to the Publishing Scotland website, and I think there's a section called the book business or something like that. I can't quite remember it, but we've got videos and things in it, which I'm in one of them as well.
Oh, something to look out for. So thank you very much. So there's another question here, and again, just pop your hand whoever you think's best to answer this particular question in terms of your experience. What is the difference between small independent publishing houses and larger ones in terms of the jobs that you get to do? In smaller houses, do you get to try out more things? Anybody feel they could speak to that?
I'm happy to, unless anyone else wants to take it. Yeah, I think I can see everyone's kind of nodding, and I think that we'd probably all say yes, that you can, if you're in a smaller independent publishing house, particularly there are some really small micro publishers that are tiny teams, you will probably end up doing a combination of roles that might be in a bigger place, might be split out into lots of different people, and that's really good for a similar reason that Vikki said for the publishing degree, in that you can get lots of different kinds of experience and maybe then decide what you want to go on to focus on. Yeah, so I would say it's great to, if you're looking to maybe do work experience or internships, it can be great to have a big name on your CV, a big publisher, but also look at smaller publishers, because you might actually be able to do more there and to take on bigger projects or just make more of an impact.
And where you've mentioned those micro publishers and smaller publishers, I mean, I think we all know, we could off the top of our heads say the names of some of the big publishing organisations. If a student wanted to target specifically micro publishers and smaller publishers, where would they get a list of that kind of information?
The Publishing Scotland website, definitely in Scotland, the Publishing Scotland website. Yeah, and then there's also
with Scotland.
You could probably go on maybe like the IPG website. There's a group called the Independent Publishers Group, and again they have member publishers. They include member publishers from across Britain, so you will find some Scottish publishers within there too. But they, as the name says, they're the Independent Publishers Group, so they've got a lot of independent publisher members, and it'll list them there too.
There's also PPA, which is sort of it's more for magazines, but if you're interested in that kind of thing, those skills in both in magazines and books are they can be quite transferable. So if you maybe are struggling with book publishing, have a look at the magazine centre. So that would PPA and PPA Scotland would be other ones to check as well.
Okay, I'm going to come to you, stay with you, Grace, for this question. So currently most internships and publishing roles are for graduates. How would you recommend an undergraduate builds experience to prepare? Could you tell us A, what you think would be good, and B, what did you do?
So there are lots of things you can do. It does depend on maybe what part of publishing you want to get into, because you maybe want to, if you're really into editorial, doing things like proofreading your friends' essays and looking over those kinds of things, working. And I know there are student newspapers, student magazines that you can get involved with, particularly if you're an undergraduate. So so you can get involved with those kinds of things, which might involve you writing a bit, but that's a really useful skill to have in publishing. You need to write things a lot. But yeah, so getting involved with things like that. If you're interested in sort of marketing, you could sort of be starting up your own Bookstagram or book YouTube channel, things like that. Just trying to sort of, speaking about books and getting involved in those kinds of things. They can be really useful to look at. But there are so many transferable skills in publishing that actually, as long as you're maybe if you get involved with something like an extracurricular activity, like any kind of society or sport, maybe get involved in the committee, that's showing lots and lots of initiative, and you're building those soft skills that are actually so important in publishing, because you can learn all the sort of specific publishing skills on the job, but those sort of communication skills and things like that you need, get them sorted first, because that's how you get the job. I did lots of things. One thing I would recommend if you're interested for students to get involved and engage with the industry is to join the SYP, the Society of Young Publishers. It's for people who are trying to get into the publishing industry and people who are in the first 10 years of their careers. So students get involved. We run monthly events. There's mentorship schemes. We've got an annual conference coming up, which Alice will speak about in the video later. So yeah, it's a really useful thing, and you just get to chat to people who love books. It's great.
Sign me up. So there's a very specific question here, so I wonder if somebody could just very, very quickly give a quick response to it, which is, what kind of qualifications do you need to get a job in rights? Is that more legal, and what are the responsibilities in that department?
There is legal knowledge. You will have to, within rights, you'll have to get to know how a contract works. But you don't necessarily have to have studied law or anything to go into a rights career. Especially if you're starting out as a rights assistant, you might be the one drawing up contracts, and usually most publishers have a template and things like that. So if you're a rights assistant, then you will think, like, the terminology and clauses and things will get explained to you. Like, I drafted up contracts, and I have no legal education at all. So as I say, you don't have to worry about that for rights. I think rights is very similar to sales in a way, in that you're selling something, you're presenting something to a foreign publisher or a TV production company if you're doing TV rights as well. So it's really your communication skills, it's really your persuasive skills to do that. So anything that you do that involves copywriting will see you in good stead for a rights job. Languages also helps with rights as well. So if you've got a foreign language, then that would see you right too.
Which leads very neatly into the next question. Are there any specific translation roles within publishing, or roles that need languages? So rights would be one of those, Vikki? Yeah.
Generally, there's not like in-house translators. Mostly publishing houses that buy books and look for translators will outsource that to translators that they've used before, or they would get recommended by all their networks they know before. But but freelance translation work is a possibility as well if you've got language skills.
Mm-hmm. Caroline, I'm going to come to you. I think we've kind of dealt with this, because Grace has given a nice bit of insight to this, but there's a couple of questions. What kind of skills are desirable? Does it very much depend on the kind of job you're applying for, or are there certain skills you could develop that would apply across the board? And what are important qualities to have in your skill set, and how can I build experience in this field without actually working as a publisher? What hobbies would publishing companies look for? And I know Grace has given us some nice insight into that already, but is there anything you would add?
I think, a lot of what I would say would kind of echo what Grace said. If you know at this stage that there's this particular job role that you're more interested in, it's definitely worth looking at, at things like the Publishing Scotland website and finding out more about that role and the kind of skills you might specifically need for that. But in general, I think being really organised, being a good communicator, because publishing is all about communication and words, and also being able to show a passion for the industry. You have to understand that the publishing industry is a business. It is about making a profit, but also everyone in it loves books, and that's why we're all there. So if you can find any way to show that, like Grace said, a blog can be great, book reviews, anything like that, working in a bookshop, just any way to show, and just be sure whenever you apply for a job or whenever you're interviewed for a job that you can talk about that publisher's books and their authors and have something to say about that.
And leading on from that, so one of the things that we've been telling people to do during 2020 when they can't actually get out into places of work is to maybe do little bits of training and little courses and dipping into events and things like that. So the question here from Katie is, any recommendations of short courses to gain experience in specific software required for certain roles, for example, Adobe softwares? And is it necessary to have good experience in these before starting entry-level roles? Well, one of the places that we've been referring students to for short, sharp, free courses is Future Learn, but I wonder if there's anything you could add to that panel.
I will say I've done a lot of the Publishing Scotland courses that they run. They are not free, but they are worth the money. I did a lot of them this year. They have editorial ones, they have some for rights, they have things for sales, marketing, they have lots and lots of courses running throughout the year. They're on Zoom, so you don't need to go travel anywhere. But if there are students interested, there is something called, I'll send you some information about this, Anne, called the Rising Star Awards, which give you a grant of up to £1,500 to go towards any kind of training or your career development in the industry. So you could use them for things like that. You could maybe look into that for doing things like that. The deadline to apply is the 5th of March though, so that's quite a tight deadline.
Thank you.
But they're open every year.
Thank you. So Shona has asked, do you have any advice on getting into publishing abroad? So out with the UK and Ireland.
Well, I would get, I mean, it's, again, you would have to research and study the country that you want to go to and find out what publisher, because most countries, have organisations similar to Publishing Scotland. So I would maybe start by hunting around for an organisation like that, and it'll probably give you a list of publishers that work within those countries. Again, also, you know, your big publishing companies like your Penguin, Random Houses, and all that kind of stuff. They have subsidiaries all over the world as well. So, yeah, it's just a case of research, which is the starting point for any job search, really.
Thanks for that, Shona. And Maria has asked, how inclusive is the UK industry when it comes to non-native speakers, especially in editorial and other language-based roles?
It's difficult to particularly editorial, I would say, is unless you can prove that like your grasp of the language that you want to work in is second to none. So it's not a complete barrier, but if you and actually maybe somebody that has English as a second language probably knows grammar a little bit more than native speakers. So I wouldn't say it's a barrier, but I would be realistic about your own skills within a second language when you're applying.
And I wonder if I could put this to you, Caroline, considering the organisation that you work for, the Bookseller. Do you know what kind of opportunities, internships there are for students at the moment, given the COVID situation? Penguin have had to cancel their work experience. So what are you seeing at the minute in the landscape of the labour market in publishing?
Yeah, it is hard. I have seen some publishers, I unfortunately can't think of them off the top of my head, that have been doing remote internships. I mean, currently at the Bookseller, actually, we have a trainee journalist working with us for a few months, and she's doing it all remotely because we're all working from home. So there are opportunities there, and I think in a way it's a positive because it kind of opens up those opportunities for anyone across the UK. Obviously, one of the downsides is that you maybe don't get as much of a feel for how the organisation works, and you don't necessarily get to meet people in different departments. But definitely keep an eye out. You can check out publishers' individual websites. You can Twitter. A lot of things are shared on Twitter as well. And if you're interested in publishing, I would recommend getting on Twitter. And another great place to look for internship opportunities is Creative Access. If you're from an underrepresented background, that has a lot of opportunities on there, and that's how I got my role at the Bookseller initially.
Fab, really good organisation. Lara May has asked, do you have any advice for the application process for publishing roles and internships? I have a lot of experience both writing for magazines and making my own, but I struggle to get my foot in the door. Can I just maybe answer that one myself to talk about the support that's available in the Career Service? If you go to anybody that's making applications, if you go to the Career Service website, click through to Careers course, and you'll see an employability accelerator called Apply. And that takes you through all of the methods of applications and CVs and covering letters, and helps you to learn how to present your experience to its best capacity. So definitely use that if you're making applications, especially if you're making applications and you're not getting through to the next stage and you have experience. What that would say to me is that it's not your experience that's the problem, it's the way you're articulating it, and that's completely learnable. Do you have any tips for those of us who are creative writers? So somebody wanting to get published, looking to get their name out there and getting published.
Yeah, I mean, unless anybody else wants to. Yeah, I mean, there's, as I say, if you go on the Publishing Scotland website, there's lots of publishers there, and you can you'll get taken through to each publisher's website. And most publishers, particularly independent publishers, will have a submissions process on their website. So follow those submissions processes and find out what kind of books that they do publish, because you'll just be wasting your time and a publisher's time if you just do a blanket blast approach. You've got to work out it's a relationship between a publisher and a writer, so you've got to work out who the best fit is for your kind of book. If you're not quite ready yet, if you're not quite at the sort of submission stage, I would if you do spoken word events, which are still happening online, and particularly if you're within poetry, but some of them do prose spots as well. Join a writers group for critique and going through your manuscript as you're working through it. Make friends with booksellers. That is one of the top tips I would give all writers, is to make friends with booksellers, because in the end they're going to be the ones that hand sell your book once it's published. And not just in a mercenary way. The more you support your booksellers, the more they'll support you. But it's got to be a two-way relationship. So support your booksellers, and just keep paying attention to like online and things like that, like what agents that are on Twitter, publishers that are on Twitter, editors, and get a feel for the kind of books that they like to see as well. So it's just a case of building up your knowledge, building up your relationships with the right people, and always be courteous and lovely, because there is nothing to be gained from anything other than nice behaviour.
Top tip as well, do not just write on every email, "Dear Sirs."
Yep.
Because there are so many publishing houses that are female-led. Do your research and find out who you're sending it to, because if you need to, just write "To whom it may concern." That's better than "Dear Sirs" if you're addressing a very a female-led publishing house.
Good piece of advice, Grace. There's also there's a website called prospects.ac.uk, and if you go into that and in the search bar put in writer, it'll take you into the job profile of a writer, and it gives you a lot of the stuff that Vikki has just referenced, but it also has a lot of click-throughs to competitions and things like that as well, that come up every year. So that's a nice little pull together of lots of places that you can be submitting your work to. Okay. So the question around postgrads So I'm in my final year of my undergrad in English Lit. If I were to do an MA in creative writing next year, would that lead quite well into your own publishing, or would a publishing master's be considered far more valuable by future publishing employers? I think this is the wider question of, should I do a postgrad in something related to the industry?
If you're wanting to carry on in education and you're definitely more interested in getting into publishing rather than writing, then I would definitely do the publishing masters over the creative writing masters. Creative writing masters is good if you want to pursue a career in writing, but it makes sense that a publishing postgraduate is going to make more sense if you want to pursue the publishing route instead.
Mm.
Can I pop this next one to you, Caroline?
Yeah.
Is there a specific jobs website for publishing? I feel like I never see publishing jobs on websites like Prospects. Can I just say a tiny little bit about this, Caroline, before I pass it over to you? So, as has been mentioned, publishing is what we call it's deemed a very competitive industry. So we tend not to see publishing jobs advertised in the normal kind of places. However, prospects.ac.uk has got really good, if you go into the search bar and put in the job title that you're interested in, like copy editor, publishing editor, those types of things, it'll bring up the job profile, and then there's a really rich seam of click-throughs to places where you'll see the specific stuff advertised, one of which is our colleague here, Caroline, from the Bookseller. So Caroline.
Yeah, so the Bookseller has a jobs board, and that's all jobs in publishing. So most jobs in publishing will be advertised there, but you can also check out publishers' individual websites. They'll always post stuff there, and as I said, on Twitter, that's another place. There's a website that I sometimes look at called Media Bean, and that's a real mix of jobs across the media, but it includes publishing. And as Grace said, a lot of jobs might be magazine publishing rather than book publishing, but there's a lot of crossover. And I just wanted to pick up on what Vikki was saying as well, that if you are interested in either publishing or getting published, I think it's a really good idea to kind of pay attention to the books that you like, and maybe the kind of books that you want to write or you want to work on. Pay attention to who they're published by. Look in the acknowledgements, find out who the agent is, find out who the editor is, and then when you're ready to pitch your work, or when you're ready to apply for jobs, you can target those places, and you'll know what you're talking about because you're actually passionate about those things.
Thank you, Caroline. So we are almost out of time. So thank you very much to Caroline, Grace and Vikki for being our panelists today. I'm so glad this is being recorded because there's so much rich content in there and advice and guidance for students, and I'm really hopeful that I can circulate it far and wide after today. But I wonder if we could finish off with just one kind of final word from yourself of something I've not asked you and I should have asked you, and that you really want the students to know. Caroline, start with you.
Oh gosh. I think, just echoing what Vikki said, just do your research. There is content out there. Publishing can be a bit of a mystery, but there is content out there on places like Publishing Scotland, the Bookseller. We have a careers page, and we're trying to do more information on there to help with this kind of thing. So just keep looking, and as Grace said, be specific when you are ready to apply. Thank you, Caroline. Grace?
I think Caroline said a lot of the things I would say, but get involved. Don't be afraid. Like, if you're on Twitter, if you're on LinkedIn, don't be afraid to, like, somebody's just said that an editor's just said they finished a book that they really enjoyed. Don't be afraid just to say, oh, I enjoyed it too, if you've just read it as well. Put it out there, and it's much easier to get it, for it to come back, because people will already know your face or your name.
Thank you, Grace. Vikki?
Yeah, I would echo that. Join in the book community online. We're a very friendly bunch most of the time. But I would also say that it's skills rather than education that really stand out on CVs. So those are the key things. So nobody really cares about your hires or your GCSEs once you've passed a certain age. It's all about your skill set. Concentrate on that.
Thank you very much. So can I just say that there's a little learning piece video coming up now after this conversation, so stay on the call. Grace, as she said, is a member of the SYP, Society of Young Publishers, and they very kindly put together a learning piece for us, how to maintain and expand your publishing network and keep up with the industry as a student. So lots of really, really good advice and pointers in there. So please stay on the call for that. So all that remains for me to say is thank you, students, for coming along. I hope you found it useful. And thanks very much to Caroline, Grace, and Vikki. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.